The Seattle Seahawks could make a change at quarterback in the offseason after another weird performance by Geno Smith. We'll break it down on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back to the podcast. We're going to break down the Thursday night football game between the Bears and the Seahawks. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Kate, let's start on the Seattle side. They win 6-3, but it was another really strange game for the offense. They ran the ball really well. The first couple of drives, they moved the ball up and down the field, but they finished the game with 6 points. Just what are your general takeaways from Seattle coming out of this game?
My general takeaways are that it feels like Seattle has a lot of the right pieces in terms of personnel for this Mike McDaniel offense. My biggest question is Geno Smith's performance going to be enough? He's been a good quarterback. Has he been a great Super Bowl winning quarterback? I don't know. And given his age, given the circumstances, given the fact that, I do think they're relatively close to a competitive window here. And, despite the fact that they're like a fringe playoff team right now, I think maybe a flip at quarterback, like you throw Baker Mayfield with the way he's playing in that offense right now, probably I think that would be a team that we'd consider a serious contender. They've got pieces on defense. I have to wonder if this is not the last season we see Geno Smith, despite playing very well. Maybe Geno Smith moves on to other pastures this offseason.
So I thought I had the same thoughts. I was watching that game last night. The very first drive of the game, Seattle just ran the ball right down Chicago's throats. I mean, they didn't throw the ball at all. And they got into inside the red zone, inside the 10-yard line. And now Michaels is like, hey, Geno's had a really bad problem with throwing red zone interceptions this year. He's got 4. We talked to him pregame. He said he's really going to focus on it. And his first pass was into double coverage where 2 different Bears could have picked off the pass. Luckily, it was dropped, and they were forced to kick a field goal. And it was just one of those things that's I just don't know if he's going to learn. And we're talking about a quarterback who's 34 right now. He's going to be 35 going into the 2025 season. I think because Geno didn't start a lot earlier in his career, we think of him as like a 29, 30-year-old quarterback. That's not the case. 35 years old. There's only a couple quarterbacks in the league that are older than Geno. And once Rodgers retires or whatever he does after this offseason, there's a chance that he's like one of the 3 oldest quarterbacks. So I'm starting to have the same thoughts, like maybe Seattle's going to make a move here.
Yeah, it's again, and I feel bad kind of having this conversation because I do think Geno Smith has been a good quarterback. It's just is Seattle going to be in the market for good? Do they want another year of good, not great? And that's where I get kind of tripped up because you've got, one of the best receiving duos in the league right now. I mean, JSN, forget his rookie season. If you just look at the way he's playing right now, playing alongside DK Metcalf, who you could argue is not playing as well as JSN, that's a really talented receiving core, And you look at, some of the personnel they have elsewhere, Noah Fant, etc. It's just weird because all of the grades, you look at his advanced metrics for PFF, like clean pocket grade, for no play action grade, which we know can so drastically mask issues in the offense. Geno Smith is a really good quarterback, but some of the mistakes, I think some of the mistakes don't feel worth what feels like we know his upside is.
No. And just to show, this is the second half against Chicago. These were their drives. 6 plays, 21 yards punt, 5 plays, 27 yards fumble, 3 plays, 6 yards punt, 4 plays, 34 yards punt, end of game. I mean, they just did nothing on offense. You can't have that many weapons and be that poor on offense. And I understand their offensive line has not been good this year. It's been one of the worst in the league. But I also don't know if you have a quarterback right now that's helping elevate that group. And again, I want to come back to this. He's going to be 35 next year, going into the final year of his deal. My guess is, Kate, that Seattle keeps him on that deal, but they draft somebody either in the first or second round. They're currently picking at 18, probably not going to get one of the top 2 quarterbacks, but could they be a team that's in the market for that third quarterback off the board? Probably. We've seen quarterbacks get pushed up the last couple of years, whether it's Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I think a lot of people thought those were second-round quarterbacks that ended up going inside the top 12. I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle was in the market for whoever that third quarterback is, whether it's Jalen Milroe from Alabama or you name your name. It seems like Seattle's just they've got to do something here because they've given Geno plenty of chances, and it just seems like they're going to peter out at 9 wins once again.
That's what it feels like. It's not about the floor of play, because I think the floor of play, you'd be really, really happy with that. It's about the ceiling. And how high is that ceiling? I think you're right. It's probably like, it just feels like 9 to 10 wins. And that's where you kind of land. And
the
again,
other thing is, Kate, like if you believe Geno is a franchise quarterback, you don't let him go into the final year of his contract in 2025, right? You want to extend him. But I don't see any way that you can give him more guaranteed money after this season. Can you?
no, I like, and that's part of the problem here is, again, also you look at the extension and consider, again, age.
Yep.
We've seen with, let's say, Aaron Rodgers, how quickly, I think even before the Achilles, there were real concerns. Like, did Aaron Rodgers hit the age cliff? And we gave him some excuses. We said, like, maybe he doesn't have the personnel, didn't get another first round wide receiver, etc. But let's not forget that Aaron Rodgers, when he started teetering around 30, 37, 38, we were having these same questions. And, like the cliff comes really fast.
Well, look at the quarterback that he replaced, Russell Wilson. He's getting up into his mid to late 30s now, and you're starting to see a drop off in his play. He's not as explosive as he once was. He's not as accurate. He's still a starting level quarterback, but I think for teams like Seattle and Pittsburgh that are trying to figure out ways to get over the hump, I just don't know if spending $43 million a year on Geno Smith is the way to do that.
So does this change your perspective? Like, the idea that we are embracing right now is that Seattle could make a change at quarterback.
Yeah.
Does that change the dynasty value of any of the receivers in the room? Or do you still feel comfortable with the overall construction of the offense, et cetera, to keep them afloat? Because, like, let's say maybe a rookie quarterback comes in. I would guess that they would use Geno in his final year of his contract as a bridge quarterback. But if not, like, if there's a rookie quarterback starting, how much does that change your immediate outlook for some of these star receivers and weapons?
Nothing at running back. It doesn't change JSN for me at all. It does a little bit for DK Metcalf, but I've been thinking for a while that maybe this is DK Metcalf's last year in Seattle anyways. He had 2 personal foul penalties last night that were just egregious. I just wonder if Seattle's going to feel like, hey, let's move him now. And maybe this is the plan. Like, you move him in 2025 for some additional draft capital, and that allows you to go get the quarterback of the future. It seems like there were some rumors about potentially moving off of him last year. We'll see. I think there still has to be some things decided there, but I'm not convinced that Metcalf is back in 2025.
I mean, I think I was thinking the same thing watching those penalties there. And I don't know if you noticed, but long after he was sat on the sideline here for those penalties, continued chirping at the Bears defense. And I was looking at that, and, despite, like, earlier this offseason, obviously the Steelers were in the market for a wide receiver. They called on DK Metcalf? And the answer wasn't no. Like, eventually the answer became no, but the answer early in the offseason was, well, we want to wait till after June 1st. So financially it would make more sense. The answer wasn't no. And I come back to that. I come back to, if they miss the playoffs again this year,
Which it looks like they probably will.
Yeah, it seems like it's trending that way. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions in Seattle, despite the fact that I'm still like kind of bullish on the organization because
I am as well.
I like Mike McDaniel. I like Ryan Grubb. I like the pieces that they have. So like it feels like they're just a couple of unanswered questions away from being a serious threat in the NFC.
And they've had some bad luck this year, and they still might get, to 10 wins. So again, I'm bullish on them long term, but I won't be surprised if they make some radical changes this offseason to try to become a team with a little bit higher ceiling than what we're accustomed to seeing. Let's talk about the Bears side, which was a typical Bears performance on offense. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season, and that means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. There's nothing better than waking up on Christmas morning and getting tickets to go see your favorite teams play. One of my favorite things about the Gametime app is that they have all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature. It'll show your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, they make it easy to save on sports, concert, comedy, and theater tickets near you. Plus, you can see your seats in a panoramic view in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the event. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Let's talk about the Bears side of things. Their defense looked great. They allowed 0 points in the second half. I thought they did a fantastic job of limiting Seattle, but we don't really care about the defense when it comes to Dynasty football. We care about the offense, Kate. Caleb Williams, 16 for 28, 122 yards, no touchdowns. Did have an interception on a fourth down play. I'm just throwing that out. It doesn't matter. Are you concerned about Caleb Williams after another stinker performance?
I mean, here's the thing. It is concerning, and honestly, like the performance in and of itself, I think like this is a doomed organization. This is an organization that's not in great straits, but 4.4 yards per attempt, 4.4. And you know what? Like you look at the 28 total attempts and you think like, man, 28 total attempts feels a little low, but yeah, it's going to feel a little low when you're taking 7 sacks in a game. It's his third game this year with 7 sacks. He's had a 9-sack game. Like, I'm worried about Caleb Williams a little bit, just honestly from the perspective of how much can his body take? If he doesn't clean up some of the mental things, like the holding on to the ball too long, playing hero ball, which we know that is what Caleb Williams does super well. He plays hero ball, and that's part of the reason we likened him to Patrick Mahomes in some senses is like, man, he knows how to extend plays and he can just make these throws that nobody else can make. There was a throw right over the middle of the field. It was like across his body. And I said, there is no way. It was into double coverage. I said, there's no way. Like the broadcast pans away. And I'm like, it can't be a catch. Can't be a catch.
It was great. It was
Rome's
only catch of the night.
Yes. Like it was one of the most insane throws. But then you have every other play where it's not, can Caleb make the throw? It's, will he make the throw fast enough? And maybe this is like an NFL processing thing. Sacks were a big problem for him in college. So like maybe it's also, just part of this mentality. Like we saw early on in Patrick Mahomes' career, like, didn't take as many as of the checkdowns, right? And now that's kind of been a big part of his game, partly due to, adjustments in the coverages he's facing. But I think he's also learned to settle. Like, okay, I don't need to go for a 40-yard play every single time. Like if I get 4 yards on first down going for a check down on a drop back, like that's better than a big sack, better than the losses that can come with that kind of play. It's just how long can his body take this?
Yeah, I don't know. I will say in terms of like his dynasty value and long-term thoughts, I've been pretty consistent. I just don't care what happens the last few weeks of the season. They have an interim head coach. Thomas Brown was promoted from, I believe, quarterback coach or running back coach, the offensive coordinator to interim coach. It's just a disaster right now, right? Like, I think Caleb's just trying to survive this year. He was talking pregame to Andrew Whitworth, and Caleb knows he has to work on his footwork. He told Andrew Whitworth, like, hey, that's all I'm going to be focusing on this offseason is getting better in that area. And I promise that it's going to be better in year 2. I don't think the Bears are going to go out and get someone like Ben Johnson. I just don't think they can convince him to come. But I do think, Kate, they're going to go out and get somebody that's going to help Caleb develop. And my guess is Cliff Kingsbury is going to be the next head coach of the Bears, reuniting him with Caleb Williams. I think that'll help Caleb feel more comfortable in the offense. And again, we're going into Caleb's got one more game left, right? I just hope he survives that last game, go into the 2025 offseason healthy, and figure out an offense that works for him. Maybe I'm foolish for not overreacting to some bad performances, but I just think he's a special player in a really bad situation.
And the thing about Caleb Williams is, again, like, it's not like he doesn't remind you what makes him Caleb Williams every single week. It's the plays in between the Caleb Williams plays that are the concerning ones. Now, I do think that, your point is well taken. I think Caleb is literally just trying to survive the year. And every time he takes another hit, you can see he is coaching himself, stand back up and get back on the field. But I do think, the organizational component is kind of an interesting one. There was a really crazy stat that the broadcast showed about the number of quarterbacks, that first round quarterbacks, where the head coach of their rookie season were fired.
Yeah.
And that's an organizational problem.
Which we saw in Carolina last year, right? Frank Reich got fired during the first year under Bryce Young. Like, this happens. And I think Bryce Young is a good example for me of why I'm not giving up on a quarterback, right? Bryce Young looked way worse than Caleb Williams. You get the right coach in there, you rebuild his confidence, and look how Bryce Young has played over the last 2 months. Caleb is far more talented than Bryce, has shown more as a rookie. I don't want to overreact here.
Yeah, I think a measured approach is good. And if, let's say, we know that, when there's a primetime game and everybody is watching, sometimes this can create some buy low opportunities because people on the big stage seeing Caleb, it's one thing when you see, maybe you're not watching the full game, maybe you're watching the clips online and you don't see all of the good mixed in with the bad. But when it's all out there for, national television audiences to watch, sometimes that can create a false sense of panic because people, it's just more widely seen. So I don't know, if you don't roster Caleb Williams, I think we understand how high the ceiling is for Caleb Williams. I think it's definitely worth knocking on the door with whatever dynasty manager rosters him at this current moment.
We should also mention Chicago's played a pretty brutal schedule over the last 2 months. I'm just going to read you the names of every team they've played. Starting back on November 17th, Green Bay, Minnesota, at Detroit, at San Francisco, at Minnesota, home Detroit, home Seattle. Like, there's not been a layup game in there like there was early in the season for Caleb when they were playing I don't know, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Washington, Arizona. Like things have gotten really, really hard for Chicago. And now that there's just dysfunction everywhere around Caleb, I think you're seeing some of the frustrations come out. Again, I'm just not panicking here. I obviously you're moving Jaden Daniels up ahead of him in your dynasty rankings. I understand if you want to move Drake May ahead of him as well, but the idea of like Bo Nix and Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy passing him, I think are idiotic.
I love that.
Yeah. All right, let's do some commotion. Players that we are promoting from our bench into our starting lineups in Week 17 championship weekend. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? How about through history, economics, in the great works of literature? Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and so much more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just kick back and enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That is hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. One in the morning with Tony Wiggins. One in the morning with Tyler Rowland. One in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Got that switched up there. Available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, okay, let's do some commotion. Players that we are promoting from our bench into our starting lineups in Week 17. Who do you got?
Let's talk about Kamani Vidal, who we've seen a lot of promise from here in his rookie season, but let's go over to the Chargers, who apparently are in a bit of a pickle in terms of the running back position, and they need some help. We officially have Gus Edwards ruled out for Week 17. We have J.K. Dobbins, who has been on IR with a knee injury. He's questionable for this game. It sounds, I think he's going to suit up, but I also kind of have to wonder how much are you going to be willing to put on his plate, when he's coming back from another knee injury. Kamani Vidal, not a guy we've seen consistently on the field, but somebody that I've been pretty encouraged by just in terms of his overall explosiveness. Hasn't really translated to the box score, but a guy that we all really, I think, kind of liked coming out of Troy. I'm okay flexing him in this upcoming matchup, knowing that the Chargers want to run the football and there's going to be a lot of opportunity here in this matchup for just something to get it done. And I mean, let's be honest, game script up against the New England Patriots. Come on.
All right, let's super flex leagues. Let's talk about some quarterback options.
Ooh.
A lot of gross ones. You can go with Aiden O'Connell, Spencer Rattler, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Drew Lock back into the starting lineup. You tell me between the 2 former Steeler quarterbacks, who would you rather play this week? Kenny Pickett against the Cowboys or Mason Rudolph going up against Jacksonville?
I'm going to go with Mason Rudolph.
Yeah,
all day. I'm not taking Kenny Pickett up against Micah Parsons. Absolutely no, thank you.
Do you know Mason Rudolph has thrown at least 2 touchdowns in each of his last 3 starts?
Mason Rudolph is a hashtag kind of all right quarterback. I don't want to give too strong a ringing endorsement, but I think there's a lot to like about that. And I mean, let's honestly just talk about the matchup. The matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars is one that most NFL offenses can find success against. I love the matchup.
I love the matchup as well, Kate. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 32nd in points allowed for the quarterback position this year. I think that's a really juicy one. Who else do you got this week?
How about Dontavian Wicks? Sure. One of your fan favorites, Marcus. The Minnesota Vikings, like, they have had a really nasty defense under Brian Flores that has put quarterbacks' heads into an absolute blender, but it has been a favorable spot for opposing wide receivers in fantasy, even if they have given, some real life challenges on the field. Green Bay, I think, is going to be in a position where they're going to need to throw the ball. I don't know that they're going to be able to run the ball as much with Josh Jacobs just based off of game script in this game. So I really like Dontavian Wicks, who, again, you're kind of playing Russian roulette with all of these receivers in the Green Bay offense, but in particular, Dontavian Wicks, I think, is one of these guys that you wouldn't normally consider playing most weeks, but I like the matchup this week.
All right. My last one is about the grossest one we've had
Please.
ever. If I said the name Jordan Mims, do you think most people would know what team or position he plays?
No, because I didn't know Jordan Mims before last week.
Yeah.
And I had to do some digging of my own. So Jordan Mims came out of absolutely nowhere in week 16, running back, New Orleans Saints.
He had 8 targets last week. And this week they're going up against the Raiders. I got to assume that game is at least going to be a lot more competitive than it was against the Packers. Jordan Mims probably in line to get double-digit touches this week. Maybe he gets you into the end zone. But if you're in a PPR league and you're just looking for somebody to fill that RB2 spot, I think Jordan Mims is a gross but safe-ish option.
Yeah, could be in for just touches, which is key at the running back position. And honestly, Mims probably a guy that is on plenty of your waiver wires.
Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go follow the channel wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check us out on YouTube as well. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy Saturday football, Sunday football. We'll be back on Monday to break it all down.